Welcome back, YouTube. 90s Kid here, and today we're on the shores of the Cutlass Keys once again. We're going to start taking shots at this boar here. We're going to start testing out different blunderbuss perk combinations, and we're going to try to find, the most damaging, at least in a single shot, basic shot of ours, in terms of like the highest numbers. That's what we're going for. I do have about 5 or 6 blunderbuss here that I want to try out. Um, and there's a few things to go over, right? Like, so first off, it needs to be said that not there's different enemy types in this game. So, your damage isn't going to be the same on all enemies. Sometimes, an enemy you're dealing with might be weak to thrust or slash. If they're weak to slash and, they're not weak to thrust, well, you're just not going to be doing as much damage. So there's a lot of things to go over here. Another thing being ranged weapons do have a persistent 20% increase to base damage, right? So if I come over here and I shoot this boar 3 times, the damage should ramp up based on that. So let's go, that's 310 is our first number, 352, 395. Persistent 20% boost to our damage there, right? Which makes it difficult, we could test we can test the numbers of our first shot, but then we have perks like Keenly Empowered, which we need to proc our critical hit. And so we need to at least shoot twice, and we're going to run our numbers of the second shot on all weapons. That way the ramp up is the same, and Keenly Empowered gets the boost and everything else. Now these weapons that have a Moonstone, it's going to be a little bit harder to deal with those weapons, right? Because I have to get rid of my skills. I got to proc Endless Thirst, and then I got to try to basically, get to my second shot before Endless Thirst runs out, or before any empowerment runs out. In order for us to get, a persistent and viable, number for every weapon that we use. With all that said, like I said, that's a lot of rules, right? I'm not using any foods. I'm gonna use my strength weapons first off, so that I don't have to change, attributes straight up. But right now we're doing 350 intellect and 234 strength. The weapon we're going to take a look at first has a ruby and ignited rune glass, but it's disdain, infliction, keen, and keenly jagged. This weapon is based more towards sustained damage as opposed to increasing my burst damage. We have such good burst damage that I wanted to have a blunderbuss that helped me put dots down and helped the dots be as strong as they can. That way it helped my sustained damage, right? At least in theory. So this is the first weapon we're going to take a look at. There's no empowerments other than Endless Thirst that we need to drop. And so we're just going to pop that, get his attention with that one, and then we're going to shoot him with that. So 391, and was that 443? Wasn't bad. Alright, we'll go ahead and deal with our next ruby weapon, which is going to be the Gold Cursed. This thing has Keen, Abyssal Attunement, and Enchanted. Pretty decent little perk combo. Let's get our 3 shots loaded up. There's no empowerments other than this, our Endless Thirst. So we're going to shoot him once. We're going to drop that and then shoot him there. So that's our second shot. And while he resets, let's take a look here. What's our next strength weapon? It's going to be this defiled blunderbuss with keen enchanted and keenly empowered. So this is a keenly empowered. This is one we're going to really need to proc. Might take a couple chances if we don't get a, if we don't get that crit, it's gonna stop, it's gonna put a little damper to all this. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get his attention first. We're gonna pop him. We got that crit. No, we didn't get the crit. We didn't get the crit. And go ahead and get his attention. I'm gonna pop that. There we go. 416 as our main thrust. Alright, I think this was our last ruby. I think we have one more strength weapon to do. It is a moonstone. So we're going to switch. This one is keen, keenly jagged, and enchanted. It being a moonstone, I'm going to have to get rid of all the skills. And so we're just going to move that. Pop them there, and then we're going to pop them there. 886. Not terrible. Not terrible. And so our next two weapons, I believe we have to test. We'll go ahead and do this one. Keen, enchanted, and keenly empowered. And it's a moonstone, so we got to get rid of our skills. Get a headshot, and then get that second. So let's go ahead and pop them with that, and then pop them with that. That should have been everything we needed. Alright guys, so we got the numbers, right? And they're, I don't want to say they're completely surprising, but they are a little bit surprising, right? Let's start at the highest, and we'll just kind of move our way down the list to the mithril, because I think there's a lot to say about the mithril. Exhilarating Moon. So that combination was keen, enchanted, and keenly empowered. You can see that extra empowerment down there. So that's 5 seconds on a 10% buff and 5 seconds off. When you're off that buff, you're going to be kind of doing this Forsaken Moon combo, right? Like you're going to be doing those numbers and then those numbers off and on. That's still better than anything else here in terms of single punch. And even if you were to, shoot 60 times, this is still going to come off on top, right? So I think it's still one of the better combos you can have. Forsaken Moon, that's keenly and jagged. That's basically the same roll, it just has keenly jagged on it. So you're going to have a 200, 250 damage dot that's ticking every second. Again, that's not better than 100 extra damage per pellet per shot, but it's still relatively good. It's still good numbers. Defiled Ruby. Now this is going to be our first ruby. This is essentially the exhilarating blunderbuss, but it has a ruby, right? This is what surprises me, because like on paper, it might make sense to you that the Moonstone, given the extra 20% damage when our abilities are on cooldown, right? But I'm using an extra 27% fire damage, 27% fire damage. This left number, this 416 on this defiled ruby, that's my thrust. 433, that's my fire, right? That doesn't seem like it's 27% higher, But again, it is what it is. There's not a lot I can do about it. To kind of to kind of add to that, I did my very first blunderbuss build was a lightning build with the Mjolnir, and that's when I first noticed that elemental damage didn't seem to balance itself with the blunderbuss as well as it does with other weapons. I don't know why, but that's what it seems like, right? So the gold curse and the ruby is the lowest number, but again, that has an attunement to it. So if you're to go back, you would see a 450 void damage tick. That's going to happen every other shot. Now, if you make that a flame attunement with the build that I have, an extra 600 damage maybe every other shot. That's almost an extra pellet. That's not bad. That's going to stack up. That's pretty good. Sometimes, instead of 8 pellets, you're almost going to be hitting 9, or sometimes instead of 6, like a normal basic shot, you're almost going to be hitting 7. So that's going to stack up. I do not think it is going to beat the exhilarating moon in the long run, but that's still pretty good, right? It's hard. Again, single shot without that attunement added, it's just not hitting what this is. But you have to take everything into context, right? Um, Mithril and Ruby. This is my go-to. And when you see 804, you're like, well, why is it his go-to? Well, it has sustained infliction on it, which gives my dots more potency. Not only that, you get 5% extra damage. It doesn't read that here, which I probably need to try it with the Moonstone. I think it's going to be a lot better per hit. But the dots in itself, I use my Mithril with my Life Taker, and the Life Taker will give you 3 disintegrate dots, right? After a round of shots at least, you'll have those 3 dots going. And then not only that, it's going to weaken an enemy. Not only that, your splitting grenades are going to drop 3 dots on an enemy. So 3 burns. That's 6. So 6 dots now. Keenly Jagged, 7 dots. Your Ignited Ruby, 8 dots. So you have 8 dots, doing a significant amount of damage per second. So that's why our sustained damage this is more sustained damage build, instead of just hitting for that combo, which I think is the Exhilarating Moon, right? I think it's pretty clear that a Moonstone, especially when you're starting out, right? Like when this is a new thing for you and you haven't spent a lot of time and you don't have the perfect armors and you don't have the rune glass, just throwing a Moonstone in is going to give you that extra 20% damage. It's going to make it day or night. It's pretty much like having trenching crits with like a great sword. Like you go from just like, this damage ain't bad, to like, oh, okay. Especially once your reload buff ramp is ramping up, and you got that 16% damage there, and then you got your persistent 20% damage with your shots. Like you start to see 1200, 1300 per pellet. Pretty awesome. So yeah, I mean, I think that's where we're gonna end the video. I got a couple videos coming up where I'm gonna really break down the Mithril and the Life Taker. I think that's really something to look at. I want to break down a full-fledged lightning build for you guys with the Mjolnir. That's going to be a separate video for an offhand video. So we got some good things coming up. So stay tuned. Keep your eye out. And as always, keep shooting. 90s Kid out. Peace.